Hey everyone, Sonic Healy Gang here. The last video I made got more support than I've ever gotten before. I know only 2,000 views may seem small in the scale of views that YouTube videos can get to, but when you've only ever gotten 300 views before, it means a lot, so thank you for that. This idea seemed like a great sequel to that video. Before we ranked them on how they lost, now we'll rewrite it and see what could have been if they had won. In this video, we'll be covering the original 3 seasons and Revenge of the Island. If you want to see part 2 with the rest of the series, please drop a like and subscribe to let me know. I also now have a second channel where we're going to be covering professional wrestling. So if you're into that, I would appreciate it if you subscribed over there as well. Anyways, on with the video.
Yes! Yes, 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 yes!
And that's a cool million for Heather!
Making Heather win in Season 1 is a pretty straightforward affair. Throughout this video, the rewrites can fall into one of 2 categories. We can either just swap someone out for the character we're pushing, or we can rewrite the season a little bit more to get a character that makes more sense to face off against them. Heather's in the first camp, and regardless of if it's Gwen or Owen, the finale would still make sense and be an exciting conclusion. The whole vibe would be different, as instead of having 2 characters people liked, everyone would be rooting against Heather. What does become a little tricky is getting Heather into the finale. Triple Dog Dare You is pretty well written to make it so Heather can never win. Owen doesn't like Heather. Owen likes everybody except Heather. So it just doesn't really make sense for Owen not to do Gwen's deal, or for him to make some kind of deal with Heather instead, who he knows is completely untrustworthy, as much of an idiot as he is. I guess you could write it so that no deals take place, but it feels a little lazy. So I propose you make this a whole new challenge. One of a more physical kind. Maybe a race through some kind of obstacle course, harkening back through all of the previous challenges, or an obstacle designed by the previously eliminated contestants, in backwards chronological order. Up the massive incline leading to the final obstacle being having to jump off the cliff yet again, like in the first episode. From this you could set up either finale. You can have Owen versus Heather by having Gwen and Heather constantly trying to screw each other over, slowing themselves down so much that Owen is able to place first. Then Heather places second, getting the upper hand on Gwen. This would be a part of Heather's plan all along, believing Owen is much easier to beat one-on-one. Or you can have Heather try and consistently fail to screw over Gwen, who after weeks of her torment is prepared for anything she throws at her. Heather in this scenario finishes first, but is unable to stop Gwen from beating the much slower Owen, making Gwen the second finalist. From there, I think the finale can play out similarly. The difference being that while Gwen had a few people on her side, Heather will have absolutely nobody, and her actions will finally catch up to her, and she'll have to do the whole grueling course alone with zero help. In the Heather versus Owen ending, this would end basically the same way as his ending that we have now does. Heather gaining a lead throughout the challenge, but everyone pushing Owen along until the final stretch, where he wins through the power of being a fat fuck. In the Gwen ending, It would be more neck and neck, Heather gaining a slight advantage through some dirty tricks along the way, knocking Gwen off the pole, trying to trip her up on the egg walk section, that sort of thing. But Gwen, although reluctant in the beginning, will accept the help of some friends to get herself back in the race. Ironically, a bit like Heather's win in World Tour, at the final stretch here, Gwen will be willed along by the realization that for once she's the person everyone's cheering for, that she's the quote-unquote good guy, and also just by her hatred of Heather, that will all give her the final boost of adrenaline to overtake Heather and finally defeat her. You can probably guess by how much I wrote for Gwen's ending that I think that's the better one here. Her and Heather have the rivalry. Owen winning is a nice underdog story, sure, but there's so much more you can do with Heather versus Gwen to have a very satisfying finale. Low key, I think it could be better than the real finale that we got. Of course, in either of these, Heather can win by just winning the race at the end. If you didn't know, which I'm sure you do, I'm sure most of you do, but in every Total Drama season except the last two, there are two different endings, one for each finalist winning. Maybe in the Gwen ending, Heather could win by manipulating Trent again, and it has something to do with him and that stupid damn rock. But I think this would probably end up being treated non-canon, since it would be a pretty unsatisfying ending having the villain win. It'd feel like Alejandro's shitty win in World Tour, but it's still technically a win.
I coach minnows. I am a CIT. More like a BITC.
Moving on to Total Drama Action, and we have Courtney. Only Courtney today. We're not talking about Owen because Owen wasn't actually a competitor, he was a plant from Chris, so it doesn't make any sense for him to win. Courtney is probably the character the most people want to see win that hasn't actually won, or maybe I'm just making that up because I want to see Courtney win. Anyways, of the two finalists of Action, I think obviously Duncan is the one you have to go with. The history between them is great. The relationship in Island and their rivalry in Action, it's very worthy of a finale payoff. Beth, in my opinion, isn't even worth considering here. That would be very different though if Lindsay had instead made it to the finale, like it should have been. Then I think I would actually have preferred Courtney versus Lindsay over Courtney versus Duncan. Courtney's rivalry with Lindsay is very well done and my favorite part of Action, whereas her issues with Duncan can get annoying, honestly. Lindsay's growth from brain-dead moron to serious competitor, culminating in her beating the most serious competitor of them all in Courtney, would have been peak. Either option, though, is better than a Beth versus Courtney finale. I think to get Courtney into the finals, you have to write her as the winner of the final Invincibility Challenge. Like, imagine she just beats the fuck out of that shark and ends up winning the challenge without it. Then, since she's the winner and can't be voted off, in Duncan's ending, have Courtney and Duncan vote off Beth and Owen vote with them, because Beth is voting for Owen because he's a plant. Courtney, thinking logically, couldn't realize that if he's a plant, that Owen can't really win. And even if he's in the finals, he'd be the weakest competitor. Duncan is actually playing Courtney by playing along with her all her rules and demands, because if he broke up with her now, she would try to get him eliminated. Duncan waits until the final challenge to sort of stab her in the back. calling back to the island special, where Courtney abandons him for the $1 million. A rare moment of Courtney being outsmarted leads to Duncan pulling ahead in the challenge, but Courtney, fueled by anger, quickly makes it a 50-50 race, and they tie just like in the real finale, leading to the losers picking the winners. In this scenario, we could see the two of them both have to run the entire obstacle course because neither of them would be able to name any trivia about the contestants. Alternatively, if it were Lindsay versus Courtney, Courtney and Duncan vote for Lindsay in the final challenge, and Owen and Lindsay vote for Duncan. Owen voted for Duncan in this episode in real life anyways, so that works out. This will lead to the first ever tiebreaker in the series. Both Duncan and Courtney believe he will win very easily, and he lets his guard down. This and a mix of his exhaustion from the episode will lead to Lindsay pulling out the upset victory. Chris will thank Owen for stirring the pot for once in his life and then fire him again, and Courtney versus Lindsay will be set. Courtney will be furious because, as shown throughout the season, nobody gets under her skin better than Lindsay. This can play out similarly to Beth versus Duncan, where Lindsay can gain the advantage by knowing all the trivia about the former contestants because she's actually friends with them, whereas Courtney will have to run the obstacle course because nobody likes her. Lindsay will not know Duncan's question though, because he doesn't let that many people get to know it. Courtney will of course believe that of everyone she'll be able to answer Duncan's question. But they ask her what the name of his pet tarantula that died during the season was. And since Courtney hated that thing, she actually won't be able to remember the quote, stupid bug's name, upsetting Duncan backstage, exactly like Duncan being unable to answer Courtney's stupid "what color am I thinking of" question. So they will have to race each other to the finish line. Courtney again will underestimate Lindsay and believe that she's finished and mock her, which will drive Lindsay to catch up and cause the tie again. Now you would think, since Courtney is an asshole, that she would just be screwed in the popularity contest. But not quite. Not every past contestant gets to vote. In the finale, only 8 people voted. One of them was Izzy, who voted for herself, or Explosivo. So actually only 7 votes were cast that counted. These 7 voters were DJ, Heather, Gwen, Owen, Harold, Justin, and Courtney. Obviously, since we're making Courtney be a finalist, in our version, she'll be replaced by who took her spot as the final boot. In Duncan vs. Courtney, this would be Beth. And in Lindsay vs. Courtney, this would be Duncan. I think you can argue in both scenarios we can still get to a 3-3 tie and have a toss-up for a tiebreaker. In Duncan vs. Courtney, DJ, Gwen, and Owen would vote for Duncan, and Heather, Harold, and Justin would vote for Courtney. Duncan's voters are obvious, they're all friends with him. Harold, of course, hates him, so he'd vote for Courtney. He also probably still fears Courtney, which is another good reason to vote for her. Justin still has a thing for her, as seen in his post-elimination video, so he would vote for Courtney. And Heather is kinda a toss-up, but I think she'd vote Courtney out of some weird sense of respect. This would lead to Beth being the toss-up that lets us do the 2 alternate endings. Beth didn't really have a positive relationship with either of them, so I don't think this is too much of a stretch. In Lindsay vs. Courtney, the votes would look like DJ, Owen, and Harold for Lindsay, and Heather, Justin, and Duncan for Courtney. Basically just a good versus evil vote, honestly. And that leaves the toss-up being Gwen this time, the series anti-hero. I think Gwen is the perfect toss-up because at this point in the series, she probably just hates them both equally. That was a lot of justifying just for one character to be in the finale. But I think it all makes sense in the end, and I think this would be an improvement on what has always been one of the more lackluster finales in this series. Also, you should definitely do the bit where Courtney runs up on Duncan like, oh, we won, but do it in reverse if Courtney wins and have Duncan run up to her.
Crossroads! Cover! Finished the story!
In World Tour, of course, the final elimination was the series' greatest coaster ever, Cody, who somehow rode on Sierra's back, sometimes literally, through to the final episode of the season, before getting whacked off a platform by Alejandro. This motherfucker barely even sang. But today we are gonna finish the story and give Cody his completely undeserved win. This one is tricky because World Tour's finale is perfect and the peak of the entire series, so nothing we do will ever be better, but we'll give it a shot anyways. Now, unlike the last two, I don't think putting Cody up against Heather or Alejandro really gives you a great finale. Cody interacted with the two, but was really just a pawn to their rivalry. It wasn't really a relationship or rivalry between them to cash in on. I think instead you have to do a Cody versus Sierra finale. Only one can win it all. Hear me out. Let's start with how do we get there? Strap in. This one will be a bit long. In Drumheller, where Sierra was eliminated for destroying the plane, actually going to change things here. Sierra won't destroy the plane. Alejandro will be eliminated, letting his guard down around Heather one time, completely cost him, and she won. Seeing everything he schemed for go up in smoke, he has just a complete meltdown, gets into a screaming match with her, and he storms off towards the plane. There, he sees the oil from the punctured drum, and spots the matches Sierra used to light the candles on Cody's cake. And while they're celebrating Cody's birthday, Alejandro, instead of Sierra, destroys the plane, trying to end the game for everyone, you know. If he can't win, nobody can. But Chris will announce that whichever two of the final three makes their way to Hawaii first will be the finalists. Alejandro is left there as punishment and is told to find his own way home. This starts playing out the same way the second to last episode did. Sierra builds a hot air balloon and takes Cody with her, and Heather gets aboard a train ready to cruise to the finish line. But instead of Alejandro just going home, he has boarded the train and released Ezekiel from his cage. And with Zeke, his only goal now is to stop Heather from ever even making it to Hawaii. The three sort of brawl around the train until they reach the front. Here, Alejandro finds a lever to disconnect the carts from the engine, which he does, but leaving Heather is too busy fighting Zeke to notice him doing this. But at the last moment, she makes a jump to the engine car. But Zeke does get left behind. Their struggle against each other continues, and in it they both end up falling off the tray near a stable with quite a few horses. Heather manages to commandeer a horse, but Alejandro follows quickly behind her as he clearly knows how to actually ride one. He tries knocking her off, but soon they hear the sound of many hooves hitting the ground behind them. As they both look back, they see Ezekiel has managed to find them and has released every horse at the stable and is now leading them like an army. Alejandro is overjoyed by this, and just when you think Heather's done, Ezekiel instead attacks Alejandro for abandonment. Ezekiel jumps off his own horse onto Alejandro's back and starts scratching at him as the rest of Zeke's horses surround Alejandro's. Alejandro loses control of his horse and they start going off in a completely different direction, riding off into the sunset as Zeke just fucks him up. And that is the last we see of Alejandro in World Tour. While this is all happening, Cody and Sierra make their way to Hawaii, exactly how they do in the show, only just Sierra has hair. They get caught in the power line and crash, and they find the fireworks. We see Heather arrive by horseback at the pier, and just when she thinks she's in the clear, Cody and Sierra fly in and then straight in a boat and head for Hawaii. Heather follows quick in pursuit. She starts trying to ram them out of the way. Sierra then tells Cody to win for them and that she loves him or whatever. And she jumps off the boat onto Heather's boat like a complete maniac. And the two start struggling for control of the boat. And Heather loses control of the steering and the boat goes off course. But before it can go too far, it hits one of the landmines. Cody, during this, has gotten ahead of them, but hearing the explosion and worrying about Sierra, he stops the boat to try and see if she's okay. But he doesn't realize that he's stopped directly in the line of fire, so to speak, as their boat comes crashing down on top of him, sending all three flying towards the finish line, making it seem like all three crossed at the exact same time, giving us the cliffhanger leading into the final episode. At the beginning of the final episode, the crew pulls up a frame by frame of them crossing the finish line. It shows that Cody was the one who crossed first, securing him the spot in the finale, pretty much just by luck, which is kind of the theme of Cody's run in World Tour. But even the frame by frame is inconclusive on if Heather or Sierra came in second. So this leads to the tiebreaker, which will be the same as the one for Alejandro and Cody. But Heather, before this starts, puts a plan into action. Realizing that even if she wins this tiebreaker, Sierra will try just as hard to make Cody win. She needs to split them up now. So while they're tying Cody up for the challenge, Heather goes up to her and plays off the previous episodes where Sierra thought that Heather and Cody were a thing because of that little Photoshop Alejandro did. In this scene, we really see the old Heather, the one that kissed Trent in front of Gwen. She reminds Sierra that pretty much any chance he got, Cody tried to vote her off and begged her and the other girls of Amazon to help him get rid of her and get away from her. It also says in private when they were talking one-on-one that he said he was using her to get the money, and then when he had the million, the first thing he was gonna spend it on was lawyers so he could get a restraining order against her. Sierra is shocked to say the least at what Heather says. She doesn't want to believe Heather, but she knows at least that half of what she said was true. Cody was always trying to vote her off and convince the team to do so as well. So she begins to doubt everything, that they ever made a real connection. Maybe he realized how she was literally carrying him on her back and decided he could use her to win the money. Heartbroken, but this also pushes her over the edge. She did all that for him, and that's how he wants to repay her. Throw her away like trash? I don't think so. So this plan ends up blowing up in Heather's face massively. Heather believes it will be like Paris again, where Sierra just got really sad, and then taking the million from there would be like taking candy from a baby. This was incorrect. The challenge begins and Sierra just kicks her ass from pillar to post. I'm talking just a full squash match.
Entertainment in tonight's main event is sponsored by Ghost Recon Breakpoint, available now. And Brock Lesnar quickly with Kofi Kingston, and an F5 by Lesnar. Here's the cover. We got a new champion.
But in just under a minute, Heather gets her ass tossed out and into the shark-infested waters without a shred of mercy. Like, it should be shocking to everyone how fast this all takes place. Sierra is just robotic about it, no emotion at all. Heather is left in total shock, but before she can finish saying what just happened, sharks attack her and she has to swim for her life. So the finale has finally been set. Cody versus a very pissed off and upset Sierra. Cody is about ready to celebrate his win of $1 million. But before he can be untied, he realizes that something's very wrong here with Sierra. He asks her what's wrong because he has no idea what Heather said to her, and she looks at him with a look that almost makes him piss himself again. She blows up at him. He tries to defend himself, saying it's not true. She says that she knows he was trying to get rid of her the whole time. He says that was before I got to actually know you and see how much you actually cared about. But she's just not believing him. And she says, "Stop. Save it. I am going to crush you. Like you crushed my heart over and over again. You only made it here because I carried you here. I saved you at every single turn. I brought you here. And I can easily be the one that gets rid of you. I am going to win the $1 million, and then you'll be the one that needs me. You'll be the one that has to beg for my attention." Too much? Too serious? I don't know. I'm trying my best here, man. So for the pineapple effigy building challenge, since it's two completely different finalists, we need new helpers. Harold is a lock for Cody. He only helps Heather because Cody throws his support behind Heather. I consider that maybe Heather should be the one to be Cody's second helper, maybe seek a little revenge after what Sierra just did, but I think a funnier option is if Gwen is Cody's second helper. She would have good reason for this. By the time she was eliminated, Cody was her only friend, besides Duncan, of course. This would lead to Sierra becoming even angrier though, because we know how Cody is about Gwen. This would also give us a good helper for Sierra in Courtney. Courtney not stepping up to help Sierra, but just to beat Gwen. Getting Sierra a second helper is tricky. Basically everyone is on Cody's side, only a few women and Tyler were on Alejandro's side. They only sided with him because he was hot. And yes, I include Tyler in that statement. Nobody would really have any reason to side with Sierra. She's an insane stalker that typically doesn't get you many fans. And throughout the season, the only person she really has any kind of relationship with is Cody. So I really cannot think of any reason any second person would step up to help Sierra. So maybe you just have to force someone to do it. Like how in Hawaiian style they forced people to join Heather's team because nobody was rooting for her. Or you could pull the Izzy's crazy let her do it card, but speaking of him, I think it would be funny if Tyler was forced to help her. I don't know. And like, he's just terrified of her. I just think it would be funny. The one that finishes the effigy first will be Cody, because his helpers actually want to help him. You know how in the song that this challenge takes place in, you see they had like lightning bolts? I think Sierra would be actively using this on basically everyone within her range. Even her own team members, causing them to resent her and doing the opposite of making them work faster, making them slower. Meanwhile, Cody will be supportive of his team whilst trying to dodge Sierra's attacks. Sierra will also be really distracted trying to hurt Cody and yelling at him, or I guess angrily singing at him. So all of this allows Gwen and Harold to finish the effigy before Sierra's team, and Cody just books it as fast as he can, mainly just running for his life, honestly. I'm gonna say that since Alejandro wasn't in the final 3, that instead in the Aftermath episode, Cody won the wheelbarrow, because Courtney wouldn't have competed in that episode anymore. And some other random character, let's say Izzy, won the baby carriage for Sierra, which is completely useless. Sierra follows shortly behind Cody, shocking the hell out of Tyler before Courtney finally finishes the effigy. The baby carriage breaks, but this doesn't matter as Sierra is able to carry the heavy effigy easily because she's a damn monster. Sierra is running after Cody with scary speed. Courtney follows after her, still determined to undermine Cody because of his closeness with Gwen. But Tyler is out of commission, and he's staying behind. Cody makes it to the Lava Stone Challenge first, and just like Alejandro, loses the use of the wheelbarrow here. Sierra arrives mere seconds behind Cody. Unlike Sierra, without the use of the wheelbarrow, Cody can barely carry the effigy. Gwen decides that she has to help Cody carry it across the path, and they tell Harold to go cut the ropes to slow down Sierra's unstoppable march forward. But Sierra is an irresistible force right now. Harold sends multiple items crashing down on Sierra, and she completely no-sells it. Sierra gets through this pretty quickly, but her anger is stopping her from just running up and getting the easy win. Instead of just bolting to the top and winning, Sierra knocks out Harold and starts cutting ropes on Cody and Gwen. Again, seeing Cody so close to Gwen is just serving to make Sierra angrier. So Sierra is just cutting ropes like a mad woman, trying to get Gwen out of the picture once and for all. Cody and Gwen take a long time to get across, but Sierra isn't making any progress. It's especially precarious having 2 people on the path at once. But they're very lucky to avoid most of the falling objects. Just as they're about to reach the end, Sierra drops something that would hit Cody right on the head. But Gwen uses all her strength to shove Cody and the effigy out of the way, separating the two. Cody is able to finish crossing. This is when Courtney finally arrives. She's able to convince Sierra to go up and secure the win, and let her stay and continue to cut the ropes. Courtney, instead of cutting the ropes willy-nilly, has a plan. She waits for Gwen to get to the last stone as she's trying to catch up with Cody, and she drops the cage on top of Gwen. With this, Cody is ready to give up, but Gwen gives him a pep talk that so many people believe in him winning. This all gives him flashbacks to the previous episode where Sierra says basically the same thing, and gives him the strength to carry on. Not just because of them, but he can't let things end like this with that crazy ass woman. So he's able to use the adrenaline in his soul to slowly start making his way to the top. Gwen tells him to go on without her. Courtney is more focused on taunting Gwen, till Harold finally gets up and says he'll get her out of the cage, to which Courtney knocks him out again. Gwen uses this moment to tip the cage over and escape, but this just leads to the two fighting, and that is where we cut to the top of the volcano. Sierra is of course the first to arrive and is mere seconds from the win when Cody finally makes it to the top. Cody basically uses the same line Heather uses about not wanting her to walk out of his life forever, but Sierra says it's too late for any of that now. She still walks over to him though. Cody says, "Fine, but is it too late to tell you how I really, honestly feel?" He stands up to look her, well, as close as eye to eye as he can, so more like eye to belly button. "Sierra, you are the craziest, scariest human being I've ever met, but nobody has ever treated me the way you do. A lot of the time that's been for worse, but there are a lot of times it's been for the better too. You've quite literally saved my life while we've been together, multiple times, but more importantly, you care about me more than anyone else. More than I cared about myself. This whole time you've done everything you can to build me up and support me. I wish I could be half of what you saw me as. But you were right. You are the only reason I'm still here. The only reason I made it to Hawaii. You're the only reason I even made it halfway through this season. And despite everything you did today, you are still the only reason I am at the top of this volcano. Because now I can't imagine life without you constantly bugging me. Yes, I tried to get rid of you because you were the psycho stalker girlfriend that I thought was all I ever wanted until I got it. But I realized you're more than just that. And then I realized you're still exactly what I wanted. So I can't stop you from winning. But this is me now, being the one to ask you not to leave." Sierra responds, "How am I supposed to hate you after all that? Alright, you had me at the word but. Let's win together, like I always wanted to." And she grabs him and they kiss, and then betrayal. And this is where the endings will split. In Cody's ending, Cody will use a pressure point to temporarily paralyze Sierra during a kiss, saying, "Sorry, Sierra. One of the things I really didn't like was when you demonstrated all those paralyzing points on me." This is a callback to a previous episode if you don't remember. I meant what I said. It's just, after everything you did today, I just can't let you win. I hope you can forgive me one more time." And he chucks the effigy into the volcano, winning Total Drama World Tour. In Sierra's ending, she knees Cody in the balls, and she says, "Sorry, Cody, I forgive you, but I'm not about to just let you win $1 million from me. I hope you'll understand." And she throws her effigy into the volcano. From there, Ezekiel will appear and attack the winner over the money, and they'll be saved by the runner-up. Sierra, regaining her movement, will be upset and turn her back on Cody, but will reconsider and ultimately kick Zeke off him. If Sierra wins, Cody will be doubled over in pain, but eventually he'll be able to get up and smack Zeke over the head with his own effigy. In both of these endings, this leads to Zeke falling into the volcano, unfortunately with the money and the eruption of the volcano. They'll run for their lives. In Cody's ending, Sierra will trip during the run, but Cody will turn back to help her up. And in Sierra's ending, Cody will still hardly be able to move, so Sierra will once again carry Cody to safety in the water. Along the way, Courtney and Gwen see the crowd running past and the lava, and they decide to call a truce to make a break for it. Gwen even grabs Harold, who's still unconscious, and Courtney reluctantly helps her carry him to the water. Once in the water, Cody or Sierra, depending on who was the runner-up, will comment on the money being destroyed, but the winner will kiss them and say it's alright, at least they both survived. Well, except Ezekiel. It's then when Zeke comes flying in as a ball of flame into the water. You cut to Chris and you roll the credits. And in the extra scene, it's revealed Alejandro had most of the bones in his body broken, getting trampled by 20 horses. And that is why Chris still puts him in the drama robot. Yes, I realize I went way more in depth on that one than the previous ones. But there are two reasons for that. One is because it's World Tour and it's the best season. But two is because I feel like this alternate finale is less self-explanatory than the other ones. Like Heather versus Gwen, Courtney versus Lindsay. I think you can all kind of imagine that finale by yourself. This one is harder to imagine, so I felt like I had to make the case for it. Still though, Heather and Alejandro is a perfect finale, so you wouldn't want to mess with that. So I don't think this is really an improvement, but I don't think this scenario is a bad one.
If I get on the show, my worst nightmare would be to get voted off by a jock. But what are the chances of that?
But thankfully we can move on now to finish part 1 with an easier finale, with Revenge of the Island, where the final boot is Zoe. The twist of the penultimate challenge of Revenge of the Island was that the winner would get to pick who they faced in the finale. Lightning won this challenge and made the only smart decision in his entire life by picking Zoe to eliminate. Of course this backfires and Cameron is pretty much the canon winner because nobody's gonna prefer the ending where Cameron kicks Lightning's ass only for Lightning to get lucky and fall on top of him. That ending is almost as bad as Alejandro's. If Zoe is going to the finale though, I feel like you can switch her for Cameron and lose basically nothing. Of course you're not gonna have Zoe becoming fucking Iron Man, but you probably get a mix of Commando Zoe and normal Zoe. Some kind of nice middle ground. You pay off the line from her audition in a completely different way. You don't really have the nerd versus jock thing going on anymore, but you still have an underdog story. And I'm sure you could still make a double knockout spot for the split endings. What if they both like clothesline each other and the winner's the one that ends up keeping their arm on top of the other one? The only real big loss you get from this is you don't get Lightning getting struck by lightning, or the cool white hair Lightning look in All Stars. Getting to this finale is simple too, as it would make sense for Lightning to choose to eliminate Cameron. 1, he's stupid, he's Lightning, shebang. And 2, because he hates Cameron. I do think that you could run a Cameron versus Zoe finale though without being boring if you keep Zoe in her commando state of mind through to the finale. In the final challenge, instead of Zoe saving Cameron, you have her instead wallop Lightning and take the win. Cameron is saved then by Chris giving Larry the flower. He's pissed at Zoe for this, but she rationalizes it as her securing the win for both of them. Cameron yells at her about friendship and all that shit, but Zoe just ain't getting it. Cameron will think that since they're on bad terms now, he might get eliminated. But Zoe adheres to their agreement and brings Cameron to the finale. But was this just because he'd be easier to beat? Cameron will keep trying to get through to her through the finale, but she'll continue stonewalling him. Towards the end of the fight, Zoe will set up for a finishing blow on Cameron, but Mike will speak up and try to stop the two people he cares about from killing each other. Zoe will hesitate, but even this will fail to truly get through to her. she's about to hit Cameron anyways, but the momentary hesitation gave Cameron the opportunity he needed to hit his all or nothing move, making the half of Mike's amulet she still has a conductor, and causing her to get struck by lightning. The two will both fall, and that's where you can do your separate endings. But in this scenario, it really won't matter who wins, because the lightning strike will zap Zoe back to normal, and the two will make up, and in both endings, they'll decide to share their money with the whole cast, like Cameron does in his ending.
Fashion school, here I come!
I think the Cameron vs. Zoe finale is more interesting to think and talk about on paper. In practice, I think Lightning vs. Zoe is probably more entertaining to watch. But at least I don't think the one I presented would be as boring as Mike vs. Zoe in All Stars. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, likes and comments are always very much appreciated. And it would show me that y'all want to see part 2 with the rest of the series. And, of course, subscribe or I'll make you walk the dock of shame. I'm gonna be making more total drama videos, among other topics for videos. And I am really hoping to be uploading more frequently. I hope to see you all in the next video, and I hope you're all having a wonderful day.